Welcome everybody to the current module, which is module number 9 of UFT training. Right, till now we have done VB scripting and we are on basic UFT right now. Alright, in this topic I'll be talking about object identification. We have done about object repository and all, and we saw what objects are and how they are mapped into the repository. Now let's look at object identification. Over here we'll be looking at the various topics like native and identification properties, get arrow property function, right? And few exercises along with that. We will be looking at how to handle various HTML components which you have on the web page, fine, with the help of UFT, and how to perform various operations on them, right? So now what I'll do is, looks very simple topic, but you know it's quite important, and it's you will get to learn a lot of things over here, if even if you think that you know this thing, right? So let me make a new test over here. Fine, I'll call it module 9 underscore 1 and store it at this location. Hold on. Right, I'll store this test at this particular location. Fine. Now the first topic which we will be discussing is native and identification properties. Alright, now if you go over to this test and if you open up your SPY, right, and if I open up Mozilla and if I go to any website, say I go to the website ebay.com, right, over here if I use my SPY to identify any particular object on eBay, fine, say I try to identify this search box. Hold on, spy, no, yeah, okay. Now if you look at this web edit, this search box is a web edit, fine. You will find that there are two radio buttons over here, not check boxes. One is native and one is identification, right? These are the native properties of this object. These are known as the native properties, and these are known as the identification properties. Alright, so how do you read these properties in the code? For example, for this web edit, if you look at the identification properties, like for example, this is the x coordinate of this web edit, this is the y coordinate, this is the class, this is the HTML class which is given by the developer to this particular web edit. Fine, disabled equals to 0 means that it's not disabled. Sometimes the input field is disabled, right? You cannot write in this. 1 means it's disabled, 2 means 0 means it's not disabled. Fine, height, HTML ID of this. So there are various properties of this, identification properties of this text field, right? Apart from that, there are some native properties as well. At times you need to read these native properties as well, okay, right? Most of the times you will deal with identification properties, but at times you would find the need to read the native property through the code. Alright, for example, what I'll do is, if I type something in the search field, fine, if I type over here, say QTP training, fine, and if I now spy this text field, right, you will see that the value of this text field will come out to be QTP training. So suppose you want to read what is written inside this text field, you have to read what is the value of this text field, then you'll have to read the identification property over here named as value. Fine, so how do you do that? Well, first of all, to do that, let me first add this text field into my object repository. Fine, I'll add this text field into my object repository. So this is there in my repository. Hey, where is the repository? Out here. Fine, if you expand this, this is the field. Fine, I'll give it a good name. Search box, right? And you move it over here. Okay, Now this is the search box, right? Just a minute, give some short names. Browser page. Fine. Now the set, if you write web edit, this is the web edit, this is the browser, inside it there is a page and there is a web edit, and inside the web edit you can fire so many different functions. Fine. The set command over here, right, the set command will set the value of this text field. You see this is the set command, right? Now if you set over here, for example I write set hello world, right, and if I just clear the value of this text field over here, if I run this will actually set hello world. In this we have already seen it, right? You see that hello world. Now if I have to read the value what is written inside the text field, okay, what is written inside the text field, you put a dot and you have so many functions. Now you don't know which function or which command do you use to read the value out of the text field, right? Now in my spy I had shown that the value, whatever it is written in the text field, is present inside the identification properties, and it is inside the identification property known as value. Okay, now if you have to read the identification properties, fine, if you have to read the identification properties, fine, there is a function known as get RO property which reads the identification properties. RO means runtime object properties. Look, these identification properties are runtime properties. That means that these identification properties are picked up from the runtime application, from the actual application which has opened when you were spying. These are the runtime properties. Fine. If I write get RO property value, and if I print this, okay, if I run this from the step, oh sorry, control F5 is the shortcut, that's the better way. So if you see that it's hanged, hold on, yeah, under output, fine, you'll see that it's printed hello world. Okay, so it set hello world, and under the output it is reading the RO property value and it's printing under the output hello world, right? Now similarly if you have to read some other properties as well, fine, for example if you have to read the RO property, say, just a minute, say I have to read the maximum length of this text field which is 300, fine, so you write over here get the RO property max length. You can copy from the spy, paste over here. Be very careful. At times, people do a mistake. They manually try to write it. They type capital V or something like that. Don't do this mistake. Okay. Always copy the RO property from the spy. Right. If I want to read the value, say default value, then I click on default value and I copy this from here. Okay, don't just try to write it down yourself until or unless you are an expert, because people do mistakes and then they get stuck and it creates a lot of problems. Fine. So when you run this, this will actually read the RO properties and all, hello world, and see it's printing 300 as well. This is the previous log output and this is the new output. You can clear it from here as well. Clear all lines. Okay, so get RO property function can help you to read the identification properties. Okay, right, fine. Now what about native properties of the object? Okay, if you have to read the native properties of the object, for example, again the same text field, right, and this is the these are the native properties. Okay, now you have to read these properties. For example, you have to read the base URI or something. Fine, the base URI is www.ebay.com. Okay, so if you have to read this property, hold on, first of all I'll copy the property from here, and you have to use the command inside the web edit dot object dot the property name base URI. That's it. So if you have to read the native properties, you have to write the web edit or whatever object it is, fine, dot object dot the native property, right? So when you run this, fine, if I run this from this particular step, you see the URL gets printed. Fine, this holds true with every object. If it had been a link or a text field, anything, right? For example, we all know that browser is also an object. Okay, we all know that browser is an object, right? Suppose if I go to the web page, fine, and if I spy the web page, any object on the web page, the hierarchy shows that the browser is also there. It's the part of the web page. It's an object, fine. If you look at the native properties, then right now there is no browser objects do not support runtime objects. That is, browser does not support the native properties, but it does support the identification properties. Okay, right. I am talking about all of this inside the properties tab. I am not going inside the operations tab as of now. I will go inside the operations tab later on. Okay, and right now I am also not building any test cases. I am building your basics first of all. Alright, so this is application version. For example, this shows that it's Mozilla Firefox 27 over here, right? Or these are the X and Y coordinates, fine. Or other properties like what is the name of the browser or something like that, fine. What is the title of the browser? Okay, so you get all these things from here. So you can get any of the identification properties from the browser itself. For example, I'll get application version, fine. So if you write over here print browser dot, again you will get the function get RO property, fine, and you can write over here get the RO property application version. So this will give you the version of the browser you are working on, fine. When you run this from the step, the test cannot run syntax and oh sorry, yes, now if you run this step, see that it prints the Mozilla version, right? Similarly, if you have to print the title or if you have to get some page properties, okay, so you write over here browser.page.get RO property, right? Fine. Now if you spy this, if you have a look at the page, fine, page has also got different properties. This is the URL of the web page which is defined on the top bar, okay, and this is the title of the page. Okay, if you look at the native properties, then there are other native properties as well for this page. Alright, fine. So this native properties you don't tend to use them that much, but at times there is a need and you are stuck somewhere and you are only getting the value inside the native property, right? Then you can use this. Okay, otherwise most of the times we go for the identification properties, fine. So if I want to get the title of the browser, I can write over here get RO property title, fine. So when I run this, let me clear out the console, and when I run this, see it prints the Mozilla version as well as the title. Okay, so these kinds of get RO property function is the one which you will be using a lot, fine. Basically, get RO property function brings in your actual value from the application, and this actual value has to be compared with the expected value which will come from your database, from your XML file, or from your Excel based file, right? Wherever you have kept your expected values, they will come from that place, right? And then you can compare the RO properties with those values. Fine. There is one more function known as get TO properties, which I will talk about later on. Okay, I'm not talking about this function get TO, get test object property. I'm not talking about it right now. I'll talk about it later on. But right now I'm talking about get RO property. Fine. So this is about native properties, identification properties, reading them. Fine. So we saw that what native and identification properties are, what is get arrow property script to find the browser version, browser title. Fine. Now how to handle dynamic objects. Now I have seen that people coming and asking questions. For example, there is a link on the web page. Okay, there is a link on the web page which changes every day. How will we identify that link? Because that link is quite dynamic. Fine. Suppose if I am on the web page, say bbc.com. Fine. The complete web page of bbc.com changes every day. Okay. This is the link, suppose. Now, this is the news today. But tomorrow there can be some other news. Right. Okay. Suppose you have to click on this link. Okay. Or you have to say read the text of this link, right? So every time your UFT should give you the right object. Fine. Now if you look at this link in object spy, okay, hold on, it's actually it's displaying a link. Inside that there is a web element. Fine, let's look at this link only, let's not go towards this web element. Fine, this is the link. Okay, now these are the various identification properties of this link. Fine, href is this, height is this, font is this, color is this, class is hero link. Fine, if you scroll down, the other properties also come up, the name, the inner text which holds the actual text of the link. Fine, now if I actually add this link into my repository, fine, if I add this link into my repository and if I open up my repository, then I will see that this is the link. Fine. Okay, I can call it, say, headlines. I can call it headlines, right? But the description property says that the text of this link is Israel expands Gaza and all, whatever it is, right? So this is the text of this link. Okay, now the thing is, I don't want the link to be identified with this particular text in the description properties inside the object repository. Okay, so I have to give a stable property. Okay, I will delete this text. I don't want text because the text will change every day. Fine, right? I will delete this. Okay, and I will spy the application again and try to find out a stable property. Fine. For example, the property like, for this link, the property like, hold on, just a minute, the class is hero link. This looks like a stable property which will not change even if the link changes. Fine. So what I'll do is I'll click on add and I will add the property class. Hold on. Yeah, add the property class. Apart from this, you can add other properties as well. For example, another property which looks like stable is, say, The height will remain same because it's a headline. The height of headline will always remain same. So you can put this property as well. So whatever stable properties you find, fine, you can put these properties, and then you can drag this headlines over here in the code. Dot click will click on it. Okay, this is the link, headlines will click on it. If you want to get the name, what the text of this link, fine, then you can use the get arrow property. For example, the property outer text contains the text, inner HTML, inner text, whatever you want you can use. Generally we use inner text. Okay, get arrow property, inner text you can use. So what will happen is that if I'm writing this way, right, if I'm writing get arrow property inner text, whenever the link text changes, okay, I'll get the updated link text. It is not that now I'll have to change my code every day. Fine. So at times the properties of the objects are dynamic. Okay. When we do test cases later on, when we build up multiple test cases, you will yourself realize that this thing has to be done with many objects. Okay. For example, you are automating your website. Fine. After logging into the website, on the top right of the website, suppose you get a text, welcome Mr. XYZ. Fine, Mr. XYZ, the name of the person. Fine, the name of the person will change accordingly to the person who's logging in, right? For example, you're logging in into your inbox, Gmail inbox. Fine, on the top left, a message comes up, welcome Mr. Sam. If Sam logs in, welcome Ashish. If I'm logging in, right? Or if someone else is logging in, the same text is coming up. So over there, you will have to find up some stable property of that text, and you need to identify the text with that particular stable property. Alright, so we will look at more such examples. If I run this, you will see that, see, it prints the updated text. Fine. Again, for example, if I am on this web page, okay, if I am on the web page timesofindia.com, fine, it's a news based website. Okay, inside India it shows news and all, right? If you scroll down, you will see, this is a very good example which I always take. You will see these two numbers, 5 plus 2 equals 2. You need to write the sum 7, so that to prove that you are not an automated bot who is trying to automate the poll section over here, right? Now if you refresh this page, you will see that the objects, they are changing. You see that now the object is 6 plus 0. Okay, so what you suppose the thing is, you need to read this thing, you need to find the sum, alright, find the sum of 6 and 0 and write the sum in this text field. Okay, so for that what I'll do is, first of all I'll go to my, so this is Times of India. So again we have got dynamic objects with us. Okay, if I'm spying, then I'll spy this section. This is a web element. Text is always recognized under web element. Okay, now if I add this web element into the repository, it will be added. Fine, right? And if you scroll down, then the HTML ID of this text field is mathq2. This is a stable property for it. Fine, the inner HTML, inner text and all will change every time. Fine, but the HTML ID is stable. Okay, if I open up my object repository, then you'll see the Times of India web page over here. I'll just name it TOI to keep it short. Fine. Now over here you see that the inner text is 6 plus 0, which is actually should not be there to identify this object, right? So I'll name this object as sum. Fine. Now I'll remove inner text property as the identification property or the description property, whatever it is, and I'll try to add a stable property which I talked about, that the HTML ID is math q2. Fine. I'll add this table property and I'll drag this object over here. Fine. And I will write get arrow property inner text. Inner text will always give you the text of any element. Okay. And you write over here print the text. So when I run this, right, in my output it will be printed. So hold on, let me clear the output as well. So I'll run this, it prints the text, right. If I refresh my page, the text will change. Fine, the text will change. And hold on, hold on, where is it gone? Okay. Hold on, let me open the browser again. It's not coming up this time. Just a minute, it will come up, don't worry. Alright, now if you look at this, you see that the poll comes up with new set of numbers. Fine. If I run this, fine, so it prints the latest ones. Now suppose I want to add these two numbers and write the result inside the text field over here. Fine, I want my QTP script to do this, right. So you can do this, you can take the, say you can take the number into the variable num, okay, right. And I'll first of all print the number num. Now remember, in VB scripting modules on the website, okay, in the VB scripting modules I had talked about the split function. Where is it? I think it's in the UI interface. I have not talked about, but in the functions of VB scripts I talked about split function and all. So you will have to use the split function over here. You will have to break this number. Fine. So what will I do? I'll write over here split. Fine. You see, this is the if you write split in VB and if you give a space, it will give you the description of this function. Expression has to be coming over here. Then the delimiter. Other things are optional, right? I'll write over here split the number on the basis of blank space. Okay, split the number on the basis of blank space. So what will happen is that 2 will become separate, plus will become separate, 0 and equals to. You take out, bring the result in a temporary array like this. Fine. So if I write over here print temp 0, hold on. So I'll have 4 elements over here, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. If I run this from step, oh, I am a Java guy. I am also a Java guy, so I got used to that. Just a minute. 0, 0, 2. Hold on. 3. So if you run this from step, see. Actually, I work on Java as well. So in Java we give square brackets. Fine. So 2 plus 0 becomes 0. Fine. So I have actually picked out each and every number separately. Fine. I have picked out each and every number separately. Now I'm only interested in temp 0 and temp 2 over here. Okay, temp 0 will become my number 1. I'm not interested in this, so I'll comment this. Hold on. Yeah, this becomes my number 2 and I'm not interested in this. Okay, so what will be the sum? Sum will be equal to number 1 plus number 2, and I'll write over here print sum. This is what our general logic says, that you add number 1 and number 2 and that will be the sum. Fine, but this is not going to be the case. If I run this, or hold on, let me refresh the page. Let me go to the website again. Now if you look at the numbers, this time it is 6 and 1. Okay, if I run this script, oh sorry, yeah, if I run this script, you will see that it prints 6 plus 1, but it should print 7. It's printing 61 as the sum. Why? Because number 1 and number 2 are strings. Remember, whenever you read even a number from the application, right, even if you read a number from the application, right, the number is read as a string. Okay, it is something like concatenating two strings. It's something like printing 4 plus 5, something like this. Okay, so you have to convert these strings into integers. Okay, you have to convert these strings into integers. Remember, in VB scripting I told you about the function cint. Okay, this will convert the string to an integer. So I'll convert both the numbers to integers, right, and then I'll add them. Fine. So when you run this, see, this time I get 7. Fine. And now I have to set the number inside the result text field, which is this one. So that is very simple. You simply have to add this text field inside the object repository. Fine. And you simply have to drag it. Okay. And you have to write simply web element sum. No, it's not the web element, sorry. Hold on, let me spy the text field again. This is the web edit. So I am not able to locate the object in the repository which I had added. Fine. Look, at times you face this issue that you add the object in the repository and there are so many objects in the repository that you are not able to locate the object. For that you use this icon, locate in repository. Okay, click on this, UFT will vanish. Fine. Then click on the text field and then click on OK. So this is the one. Fine, this is the one. I knew where it is, right? I deliberately did this because at times you feel a little bit confused. Okay, you drag this over here. Fine, and you set the sum inside it. Okay, right. Now when you again run it, if you look at the text field, see that 7 is written inside it. Now this code is quite dynamic. Even if the numbers they change tomorrow, fine, my UFT will pick up the updated numbers and will write the numbers over here. Okay, fine. So this is about native and identification properties, get arrow property, script to find the browser version and all. Okay, now let's do one more example. Fine, on dynamic objects only, let's do one more example, that is search results from Google. Okay, for example, I go to Google and I search there about something. For example, I search there for books. Okay, now you get this result, that these are the total number of results, right, when you search books. Fine. Every time the search results will change. Okay, so how do you manage this thing? You will have to find a stable property which will identify this. Alright, if I spy this in, if I spy this, fine, I'm I'm not getting, like, I'm getting this individually, but I'm not actually getting the number individually. I'm getting the whole text which is there in form of a web element. Okay, now obviously if I add this web element into the repository, fine, and if I open my repository, then in the books Google search page, fine, I will have this. Fine, so I'll just call it as search result number. Fine, I'll remove this property and I'll add a new stable property. Now I think you are very well versed with it by now. For example, HTML ID is a stable property. So if I drag this into the code and get the inner text, I'll always get the stable inner text. Fine, hold on. I'll go to the bottom of the and type it over here. Right. So if I write over here dot get arrow property inner text, so I'll always get a stable property, that is I'll always get the right value no matter what I'm searching for. Fine, if I use this, I'll always get the right value. Look, I'm not elaborating more on this because I think I've elaborated enough, right? That is, you have to find a stable property, okay, which will denote this. Fine, alright, okay. Now let's do an exercise on Windows based calculator. Okay, then we will jump over to uh, various pages, various objects on the page, and how to capture screenshot and all everything. This is the Windows based calculator. Fine, suppose I have to calculate something and find the result and print the result. Now this is a Windows based application. Okay, till now I talked about web based applications. Okay, now what about Windows based applications? Like, look, the overall concept of web based and Windows based, it overall remains the same. Fine, don't think that web based will be very different and Windows based will be very different. No, it's not like that. If I spy this calculator, okay, let me save this project, make a new project known as calculator. Fine, and if I look at this calculator, right, if I look at this number 9, this is a win button. Fine, number 9 is a win button. If I, now it's under a window, okay, so this has also got identification properties, and native properties are not supported by win button. Okay, if I look at window objects also don't support native properties. Generally in Windows based applications, fine, we sometimes we get the native property, sometimes we don't get. Okay, majority of the times I have seen not getting those properties. Okay, so this is a Windows button and these are the net identification properties. Okay, now if you look at, say, if I add this button, for example, I add the button 7 inside the repository. Okay, I've added this. If I open up the repository, then you will see this button. Fine, and if I spy again, if I add number 8, right? I'll add number 8 in the repository, and I'll spy again and I'll add number 1 inside the repository, right? So you see that these buttons are getting added, and they are being recognized on the basis of a description property known as window ID. Okay, the application is such, the Windows based calculator application is such that every button has got a different window ID property. This is the one. Okay, it's unique. Fine, it uniquely identifies it, right? And over here, this was 7, this was 8, and this was 1, right? So I'll name it as button 7, button 8, and I think it was 1. Let us check it. Fine, I'll just drag them. I'll drag 1 over here, 7 over here, and 8 over here. Actually, it was a little confusing for me, so I'll just clear out and run the script from this particular step. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Stop it. I'll also record opening the calculator. Right. Now let me run this. It doesn't really make a difference. Yeah, it's working now somehow. 178. Fine, I was right. Okay. Now after typing this, you can click on anything. If I have to read from this text field, again, in case of Windows based objects as well, you have the property known as get arrow property. If I have to read any button property as well, I can read it. For example, this button has got various properties, right? If I try to spy this button, right? If I want to read any property of this button, that is, what is the native class of this button, or what is the width of this button, I can use the get arrow property function, and or the x and y coordinates of this button. I can use the get arrow property and get the x and y coordinates, right? Or if I have to read what is there inside this particular text field, fine, this text field is, it falls under another class known as static. Okay, and inside it you have the text property, which tells you what is written inside that particular uh, section. Fine, so if I add this into my repository, fine, now this is quite monotonous thing. Everything what I wanted to tell you was, don't think that everything will be different, right? In case of Windows and web based application, the concept is same, only thing is that the classes change. For example, the class over here is static. Okay, I'll call it as result text, right? So I can drag it over here. Fine, this has also got a unique window ID known as 150. Okay, and I can write over here from the result text, get me the arrow property. What was the arrow property? Text was the arrow property which actually held the text, so I can print over here. Okay, so if I just run from line number 7, control F5, if I run this, see, it prints what is written over there. If I change the text, fine, and if I run this, see, it prints the updated one. Fine. So basically the concept is same for Windows as well as web based applications. Fine. Now the concept of arrow property I am talking about, it is the same. Okay, now if you look at how we will identify the various different objects on the page, like links, lists, input boxes, buttons, radio buttons, check boxes, how do we get to know which radio button is selected in a group of radio buttons, right? Or there is a list box, how do I find that how many total elements in the list box are there, which element is currently selected? find whether the list box is enabled or not, or if there is a multi-select list box. So how to do those things? Okay, we will look at it now, and we will actually look at the operations tab of the SPY as well. Okay, till now I have been talking about the properties tab. Now I will look at the operations tab as well, and I'll explain you about this. Fine. So let's move forward.